Good evening. I call to order this September 7th, 2021 meeting of the Winston-Salem City Council, and would say to you that pursuant to the policy and procedures adopted by the City Council relative to virtual meetings, I've determined that it's not feasible for the City Council and I to meet together physically tonight. All council members are participating virtually. Council members will vote with a roll call vote. A council member will be recognized. They'll raise their hand and state their vote. Would the city clerk please call the roll, please?
Councilmember Larson. Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Mundy.
Present.
Councilmember Scipio.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Here.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Thank you very much. Before we go into the moment of silence tonight, I'd like for us to please remember the family of William Chavis Renard Miller Jr., who and the families at Mount Tabor High School who experienced a very tragic situation last week when Mr. Miller was killed. Also, we lost two wonderful citizens in our city last week, Jerry Gilmore, as well as Mr. David Freeman. So I'd ask that we could keep those families in our thoughts and prayers tonight as we have a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you very much. Tonight's agenda of the City Council is comprised of the following items. There are 8 zoning petitions, there's an UDO text amendment, and an item related to boards and commissions. The zoning petitions and the UDO text amendment are listed as public hearings. And when these public hearings are called, persons will be given an opportunity to speak virtually. If there is opposition to the zoning petitions, the proponents and the opponents will be each given 15 minutes for presentation and then 3 minutes for rebuttal. If no one wishes to speak, I'll close the public hearing and the City Council will consider the item. With the exception of item Z8, written comments were accepted on the public hearing items until 24 hours prior to the start of this meeting. The meeting is being televised live tonight on TV 13 and will be replayed on Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. and again Wednesday at 9 p.m. Copies of our agenda as well as videos of previous meetings are available online at the city's website at www.cityofws.org and just click on the Watch Meetings Online option. Ms. Kenny, may we have the first item, please?
Item D1, continuation of public hearing on zoning petition of Jones Estates A&W LLC from MH and RS20 to MHS. Property is located on the north side of High Point Road, east of Glen High Road. Planning Board recommends approval of petition. This item was continued from the August 2nd, 2021 City Council meeting.
Council members, I would recognize Councilmember Taylor, I believe, is going to make a motion to continue this item and would like to make some comments first. So, Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, I'll just get right down to it. I move that item Z1 be continued until the November 1st, 2021 meeting of the City Council.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion of continuing the item to November 1st? All right, seeing none, I'll go to the roll call. A yes vote will move this item to November 1st. Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. That item is continued to November the 1st. Item Z2.
Item Z2, public hearing on zoning petition of City of Winston-Salem from RM18 and HB to RM18-L. Property is located on the northwest corner of West Northwest Boulevard and Underwood Avenue. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
This is a public hearing. Eric, is there anyone signed up to speak on this item?
There is not, Mayor. Mayor joins.
Thank you very much. Therefore, I will close the public hearing and would recognize Mayor Pro Tem Adams if she's ready.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. King, could we have a short review of what we are attempting to do here?
Yep. I think Mr. Murphy's going to handle those tonight.
Oh, Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry. I'm still learning. Old habit.
That is quite all right. So am I. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Before you tonight is case W3486. We as the city are the petitioner. The site is 4.3 acres located on the northwest corner of West Northwest Boulevard and Underwood Avenue. The request is to rezone it to special use limited rezoning from HB and RM18 to RM18L for the uses listed on the screen. Here is the growth management area map with the subject property highlighted as the labeled black dot. The subject property here outlined or shown in yellow, you'll notice they're located along Northwest Boulevard, just south of West 13th Street at the corner of Underwood Avenue. Here is the subject property outlined in yellow on the aerial photography. This is looking west on West Northwest Boulevard. The site is to the right. This is looking at the intersection West Northwest Boulevard and Underwood Avenue. The site is on the left. You'll see the city vehicle there. The property is located just to the left of the vehicle. These are offices across Northwest Boulevard. The site is on the right, on the opposite side of the street. And this is looking west on Northwest Boulevard towards University Parkway. Again, the subject property is to the right. Here is the North Central Area Plan update with the highlighted property shown with the recommendation for this to be open space. It was excess area from a previous redevelopment project, I believe. And the request would permit infill development in a variety of housing types located within the GMA2. Legacy 2030 does recommend a mixture of residential densities and housing types to promote quality design and infill development. Adjacent properties have similar residential uses. The site does have adequate access to public utilities and access to WISTA routes along Underwood Avenue. This item was heard by the Planning Board at their August 12th, 2021 public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board voted 9-0 to recommend approval of this request. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Murphy? Mr. McIntosh, do you have a question? Please go ahead.
Just a technical question. What does the addendum -L mean in this, and how does that change RM18?
It's kind of the interim step between general use zoning, where you can have the full range of uses allowed by the zoning district, and the most restrictive, which is an S, which has a site plan tied to it. The L designation means it's limited use, and you can have conditions of approval and limit the uses without having to produce a site plan at this stage.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. Mayor Pro Tem Adams, if you're ready for a motion.
Yes, I move for approval of 1, the statement of consistency for approval of this item, and 2, W3486.
Second.
Thank you. Second. Any further discussion of this item?
Mayor.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just hope the council remembers that this has been worked on or talked about for over a year. Again, it's about providing housing that's affordable for different pockets of the community. And along Northwest Boulevard, as I said before, Northwest Boulevard is a major corridor from the east to the west. And my hope is that we will upgrade and do an area plan for the Northwest Boulevard corridor to improve its livability and its appearance throughout the city. Because once you pass Northwest Boulevard at Thurman Street, the whole appearance of Northwest Boulevard changes all the way to First Street. So Northwest Boulevard runs from First Street all the way basically to New Walkertown Road. It turns into 14th, but it's all still a straight shot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, with no further questions, we'll move to the vote. Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Now go to item Z3.
Item Z3, public hearing on site plan amendment of Housing Authority of City of Winston-Salem for changes to replace a 120-unit apartment building with multiple apartment buildings containing 81 units. Property is located on the east side of Highland Avenue between East 12th Street and East 11th Street. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Thank you. Councilmembers, I understand Councilmember Scipio would like to continue this item, so therefore I will recognize Councilmember Scipio for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that item Z3 be continued to the October 4th, 2021 meeting of the City Council.
Is there a
Second.
Thank you, Clark. Any further discussion? All right, we'll go to roll call. Yes vote would move this item to October 4th. Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. That item is continued. Councilmember Scipio. Item Z4.
Item C4, public hearing on site plan amendment of D-2 Dario LLC for changes modifying the traffic circulation for a restaurant in a HB-S zoning district. Property is located on the north side of West Clemensville Road between Peters Creek Parkway and Orchard View Drive. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Mr. Murphy, is there anyone signed up to be heard on this item?
Mr. Mayor, there is no one in opposition. We do have the petitioner who is available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I will therefore close the public hearing. Councilmember Mundy is going to handle this item tonight in lieu of Councilmember Larson, so I'd recognize Councilmember Mundy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think since this is a local business trying to solve a good problem to have, if Mr. Murphy could give us a brief overview of what Dario is proposing.
Thank you. Site plan amendment, Mr. Murphy, if you'd cover that for us.
I most certainly will. Let me get it pulled up real quick. Okay, the request is for to have a site plan amendment for a 2.35 acre site located on the north side of West Clemensville Road between Peters Creek Parkway and Orchard View Drive. And again, it is a site plan amendment for property zoned HBS. Here, the subject property is shown on the growth management area map for the city and the county along the 150 growth corridor. Here, the subject property is shown in yellow, again, at the corner of Clemensville and Orchard View Drive along with the access road, access lane or street into the shopping center. This is the subject property outlined in yellow shown on the aerial photo. You'll notice that on the western portion of the site, it is already developed. On the HBS portion, the eastern portion of the HBS is on site. Council approved a rezoning over the last couple of years, and they actually had a site plan amendment that came in on that portion. And it is actually under construction for an additional parking area for this successful business. Here is the subject property. We are standing on the south side of Clemensville Road looking at where they are beginning to work on installing a new parking lot. This is further south looking directly, no, I'm sorry, this is to the east. They're off Orchard View looking at Dario towards the west. The property where the new parking lot is going is in the foreground. This is as shown here, this is approximate location of the new driveway off of the entrance drive into the Dario site itself. Here is the subject property shown on the South Suburban Area Plan update. The entire area is recommended for commercial, so it is consistent with the area plan. This is the site plan shown with some of the highlighted features. They are modifying their drive-through to make it a double stack drive-through throughout, kind of reacting to kind of what I would call the new norm of drive-through and curbside service. As part of that, they are differentiating their drive-through access from their parking access, both to the east and to the west. And that's just some of the areas that are highlighted and kind of how that traffic flow will work. In summary, the proposal maintains the two-way traffic flow along the eastern side of the building and allows a new and more direct exit for drive-through traffic. Winston-Salem DOT has no objections to this new connection. The revised site plan does maintain the buffering and fencing treatment along the northern property line adjacent to the single-family homes and the evergreen plantings within the street yard of Orchard View Drive. It is not anticipated that this will increase trip generation as there is no building expansion. It's just trying to deal with kind of the new reality and the success that they have had at this location. This item was heard by the planning board at their August 12th, 2021 public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and planning board did recommend approval of this request by a vote of 9-0. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. And let me hit stop share.
Are there any questions of Mr. Murphy? Seeing none, I'll then ask Mr. Mundy for a motion if he's ready.
And I'd like to just point out that Dario is a homegrown business, and I'm glad to see that they're successful so much that they need to expand their footprint there. And I'd like to invite them to expand into the Southwest Ward anytime they're ready. So I'll move for approval of 1, the statement of consistency for approval of this item, and 2, W3488.
On the north side of Old Walkertown Road, east of Davis Road. Planning board petition.
Thank you. I understand Councilmember Burke would maybe like to continue this item, so I'd recognize her for a motion if she's ready.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. I move that item Z5 be continued to the October 4th, 2021 City Council meeting. Thank you.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote. A yes vote will continue this item to October 4th. Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
And Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
That's unanimous to continue the item to October 4th. Thank you, Councilmember Burke. Item Z6.
Item Z6, public hearing on zoning petition of Hearst Davis Building LLC from LB to PBL. Property is located on the east side of Oakwood Drive, north of Cloverdale Avenue. Planning board recommends approval of petition.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Mr. Murphy, are there anybody signed up in opposition to this item?
Mayor, there is no one here in opposition to this item.
Thank you. Therefore, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Recognize Councilmember Mundy.
This is a fairly straightforward request for rezoning to allow this business to expand on the inside and still maintain their current parking, the number of parking spaces. It is in an area that gets a lot of pedestrian traffic. So unless any other members of the council specifically would like a staff presentation, I would move forward with approval for 1, the statement of consistency for approval of this item, and 2, W3491.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second. Any further discussions, council members? Seeing no one, we'll then go to the roll call vote. Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor? Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Councilmember McIntosh
Aye.
and Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Mundy. Item Z7.
Item Z7, public hearing on zoning petition of City of Winston-Salem from Forsyth County RS20-S and AG to Winston-Salem RS20-S and AG. Property is located on the southwest side of Sawmill Road, south of Union Cross Road. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
I recognize Councilmember Taylor. I believe has some comments and then a motion.
Good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. After speaking with representation from the neighbors, there are several technical questions that the neighbors would like to have addressed. So they're listening in full force. I wanted them to know that I will be conferencing with staff and some of the neighborhood representatives to discuss their concerns around historic preservation, transportation, water quality issues, and other issues that they brought up. So with that being said, I will move that item Z7 be continued to the October 4th meeting of the Winston-Salem City Council.
Second.
Motion and second to continue this item to October 4. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the roll call. Yes vote, we'll move this to October 4th. Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous to move that item to October 4. Item Z8, please.
Item Z8, public hearing on special use permit of Joanne Mary Mitchell for a parking reduction for a restaurant and growth management area 2. Property is located on the northwest side of West End Boulevard across from Summit Street. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Council members and members of the public watching this meeting tonight, this is a public hearing regarding the petitioner's application for a parking reduction for a restaurant without drive-through service in Growth Management Area 2. The process for issuing a special use permit is quasi-judicial. Speakers must present a testimony and evidence under oath. Speakers should rely on their own information and not base their remarks on what someone else has said or knows. The applicant and other witnesses have the right to ask questions of each other. All testimony and evidence must relate to the 4 findings of fact that the council must make. All testimony and evidence must relate to the special use permit requested. As it relates to the quasi-judicial hearings, council members are prohibited from considering opinion testimony from non-expert witnesses, in particular testimony as to how the proposed use would impact the value of neighboring properties. Additionally, council must also only consider evidence provided at the hearing. Communications with members of the city council outside of the hearing are prohibited and must be disclosed, if any. The 4 findings of fact are on the screen. The process also requires the council to issue a special use permit only when it is able to make an affirmative action finding as to each of the 4 findings. The applicant has the burden of proof as to the 2nd and 3rd findings. The opposition has the burden of proof with respect to the 1st and 4th findings. Anyone who intends to speak must be sworn in. When each side will be given 15 minutes for presentation if requested. Therefore, if there's anyone who wishes to speak on this item, please let us know at this point, and we will swear you in along with members of the staff who will be making presentations. Anyone, Mr. Murphy, that?
Mayor, we do have Brett Summerfield here, and at one point I believe there was going to be someone else, but I'm not sure that they have shown up at this point. So we do have Brent Summerfield who will need to be sworn in along with myself, and I'm not sure if Aaron's planning on getting sworn in as well. But
Yeah, might as well.
All right, why don't we proceed with the swearing in, Mary Beth, please?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the statements you are about to make are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
All right, thank you. Before we proceed to the public hearing, I need to ask, does anyone not consent to conducting this public hearing for this matter during the remote hearing and conducting it virtually?
Mr. Mayor, there's no one else who has signed up in either for or against or opposed to conducting the special use permit hearing virtually.
Very good, thank you. So therefore, we will proceed with this item in a virtual manner there. And no one has signed up to speak on this. So Mr. Murphy, you want to give us a brief summary of the item?
I can, Mr. Mayor. I know that the Mr. Summerfield and I believe someone else is there with him, and they are the petitioners. I can give the facts behind the case, but we probably will need to hear from them since it is quasi judicial, and we do need to have information on
record.
On the record for that. So let me get to the presentation. Okay. Good evening. The petitioner is Joanne Mary Mitchell. The site is a 0.05 acre piece of property located on the northwest side of West End Boulevard across from Summit Street. The request is a city council special use permit for a parking exemption for a restaurant without drive-through service in Growth Management Area 2. Here is the subject property highlighted. It is shown within the Growth Management Area 2 area on the west, just west of downtown in the West End area. Here is the subject property shown with a box around the larger map and then an inset map that shows the piece of property. It is a very narrow piece of property, essentially just the width of the building. But this shows where it is close to Renolda at West End Boulevard across from Summit Street. Here is a similar image with the inset box on the aerial photography. You can see where this again is located just across from Summit Street on West End Boulevard. Here is the subject property. It's where the arrow is pointed. You'll see the purple S special use permit sign in front of the gray colored building there. Again, just a picture. This is looking more northwest from Northwest Boulevard. This is located on the alley to the rear. This is the subject building in the background here. This is the subject property shown on the South Central Winston-Salem area plan update, and it does indicate this piece of property for commercial use. This is essentially an as-built survey that shows the existing property, and a special use permit requires a site plan review by the planning board, but the planning board's job is to certify that the site plan meets all UDO requirements except what the request is for. In this case, that it meets all requirements except for parking, and the planning board did make that finding, and we'll get to that in a second. The city council findings, these are the findings that must be found: that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the application and plan as submitted and approved. The proposed use, restaurant without drive-through service, is not a threat to public health or safety. There are numerous other restaurants within the West End Activity Center. Further, no expansion to the existing building is proposed. City Council finding 2, that the use meets all required conditions and specifications. To the extent possible, the site is compliant with all UDO requirements. This permit is necessary because the proposed use makes the site ineligible for an exemption granted to other older non-residential buildings in the same area. The site does not have access to off-street parking. And what that finding there is alluding to is that if you have a building built prior to 1987, you are held harmless, and it was built as a commercial building, you are held harmless to having to provide parking unless you are a use restaurant, and again, that is what they are requesting. City Council finding 3, that the use would not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. Planning staff does not have the expertise to make property value determinations. However, as mentioned previously, there are numerous other restaurants in close proximity. City Council finding 4, that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the application and plans submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with legacy. The site is located within an activity center where compact, pedestrian-oriented development is encouraged. Activity centers are intended to provide needed services within walking distance of residential areas. Additionally, the area plan specifically recommends strengthening the existing commercial areas in this activity center through public and private investment, incorporating more mixed-use development into the area. The proposed use is compatible with many other uses in the immediate vicinity and fits well within the recommendations of the area plan. The activity center is characterized by its pedestrian-friendly design with ample on-street parking, which facilitates traffic calming. Including back-end parking on Northwest Boulevard, the area can accommodate approximately 158 on-street parking spaces. Most of the uses in the activity center offset the on-street parking, with well-located off-street parking that is not visible from Ronaldo Road or West End Boulevard. Considering the presence of nearby transit and on-street parking, the ability of nearby residents to walk to this location, and the high turnover nature of the use, staff believes the request is in keeping with its surroundings and in general conformity with legacy. In summary, the proposed use strengthens the West End Activity Center by redeveloping an existing business location. There is ample on-street parking along many of the streets in this activity center, and the proposed use does not detract from the pedestrian-friendly character of the area by adding an off-street parking lot. Again, this item was viewed by the planning board at their August 12th, 2021 meeting, and the planning board did find that the site plan meets UDO requirements, save and except the requested parking reduction. So the recommendation is for approval of the special use permit. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Murphy, before we hold the public hearing? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the public hearing. Mr. Murphy, would you recognize those individuals who are signed up to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Mr. Brent Summerfield, if you would just unmute your mic and you can speak, and or your colleague that's with you. I'm sorry I don't have a name associated with that on the screen, but y'all can introduce yourselves and speak, and I believe the mayor will recognize you.
Yes, my name is Brent Summerfield. I'm here with Joanne Mitchell, the property owner. Ms. Mitchell does have a hearing disability, so I'll be able to speak in her stead. And then we're basically here to address any questions or concerns of the council, or if there's any concerns from the public.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Summerfield from the council? All right. Seeing no one, if there's no one else to be heard on this, I will therefore close the public hearing, and we can move to a council consideration of this, and I'd recognize Councilmember McIntosh. You're muted, Mr. McIntosh.
Thanks. I move that based upon the application, testimony, and evidence presented at the public hearing, 1, the City Council affirm the 4 findings as required by Section 3.2.13 E6A of the Unified Development Ordinances, and 2, the City Council approve W-3492 and issue a special use permit to Camel City Commercial LLC for a parking reduction for a restaurant without drive-through service in Growth Management Area 2.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any further discussion? All right, thank you. We'll move to the roll call vote. Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor? Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember McIntosh. Item Z9.
Item 9, public hearing on ordinance to modify Table 5.1.1, principal use table of the Unified Development Ordinance to allow schools and religious institutions in the entertainment zoning district. Planning Board recommends approval of petition. This item was recommended by the Community Development Housing General Government Committee.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, could you give us a brief summary of this proposed UDO change?
I can. Let's see. Get this pulled up. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. This is an external text amendment, and we actually do have Mr. Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates here representing the petitioner. This text amendment was proposed by Hank Perkins to modify the table of permitted uses of the UDO to allow schools and religious institutions in the entertainment E zoning district. The entertainment district was established in 2012 for the purpose of accommodating a mixture of retail, office, residential, and entertainment, both indoor and outdoor related uses within growth management areas 1 and 2. Since that time, multiple E district rezonings have been approved in the northeast section of downtown Winston-Salem. Associated with the E district, the use of entertainment facility large was established. This use may include indoor and outdoor events of large occupancies with amplified music. Considering the generally contemplative nature of schools and religious institutions, these uses were intentionally excluded from the E district to minimize potential land use incompatibilities. The request before you would permit by right the uses of church or religious institution, both neighborhood and community scale. The uses of school private and school public would be permitted with a planning board review. In recent years, projects have been proposed which would establish a significant residential presence within the E district boundaries. Given this evolution, staff believes that inclusion of these institutional uses is appropriate and would further the district's intent of fostering a walkable mixed-use area. As a result of that, the recommendation is for approval. The City County Planning Board did conduct a public hearing at their June 10th, 2021 meeting. There were no speakers in opposition, and the item was recommended for approval by the Planning Board by an 8-to-1 vote. This item was also considered by the Community Development Housing and General Government Committee, which recommended approval to the full council.
Thank you.
With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions, Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing no one, this is a public hearing. Excuse me, Mr. McIntosh had a question.
Actually, Councilmember Scipio.
Oh, sorry, I can see Scipio. Councilmember Scipio has a question.
Yes, I do. Mr. Murphy, are there zoning districts that exclude schools and religious institutions at this time other than the E district?
That's a good question. If you hold on a second, I will give you the answer. Let me pull up the table of permitted uses. There are probably a couple of districts that do, but for the most part, schools are allowed. Let me get to the institutional and public uses. The use school public is permitted in all residential zoning districts, and there are a number of commercial districts that are not allowed in NO, LO, CPO, GO, as well as NB. But a lot of those districts, GO and CPO being the exceptions, but NO, LO, and NB are kind of small lot commercial where you don't have large swaths of property zoned for schools. And then LI and GI and CI do not allow schools, but all the other commercial districts do allow schools. And it's a similar for church or religious neighborhood scale, which are less than 400 seats, I believe. It may be less than 600. I had to go back and look. Are allowed in every zoning district except for E. And the use church or religious institution community scale, they are allowed in all zoning districts except, again, the NO, LO, NB, again, because those are those smaller lot commercial, and then the zoning district E. So for the most part, both the church and religious institution neighborhood and community and schools are allowed in most all of our zoning districts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntosh, and then Mr. Mundy.
Good.
You're good. Okay, Councilman Mundy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How do we protect the entertainment businesses that are there so that there's not a conflict if our entertainment business has an outside festival scheduled at the same time religious institution has a funeral? That's a bit of a conflict of not conflict of interest, but it's certainly a conflict. Since I think first priority should be given to the businesses that are offering entertainment. How are we going to safeguard their grandfather rights because they were there first?
I mean, that's an interesting question. There is no easy land use consideration to address that. I believe that you are correct. Essentially, there are noise ordinance considerations, but those noise ordinance considerations are only viable certain times of the day, and there are some special rules that are in place for the entertainment district. So they, basically, I would like to think that folks would play nice in the sandbox together, but I believe that the entertainment venues in and of themselves are protected by the regulations in the E district that council placed both in the city code and in the UDO whenever the E district was created. Again, that in and of itself perhaps would not protect from an argument or a spat or someone calling the police, but they would be protected by the regulations in city code.
Was this a standard zoning case where a sign went up and everyone in the surrounding area had to be notified? So has there been any input from the existing businesses in the entertainment district?
Keep in mind, Councilmember Money, that this is a text amendment, so there was no sign posted in the area. This is this has general applicability throughout the district. Now, granted, the E is isolated to a particular area. Most of the property that is currently zoned E is actually owned by the petitioner or has been developed by the petitioner, Mr. Perkins. That's not 100%, but most of that property that has been zoned and or rezoned to E is controlled or was developed by the petitioner. So there was no direct public notification on this. It did go through the standard notification procedure of being online and being advertised within the newspaper, both for the planning board public hearing and for the city council public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Murphy? With this, a public hearing. Oh, excuse me, Councilman Scipio, you're off my screen, so I can't see you. So I recognize you. I apologize.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, is it correct that residential is allowed in the E district or not?
And I never answer use questions without looking at the table, unless I have it directly in front of me. I learned that a long time ago. Residential zoning or residential uses are allowed in the E district as a planning board review. So there aren't any residential allowed 100% by right. You have to have a planning board review that goes to the planning board for a review of the site plan. But both single family, quadruplex, townhome, and multifamily are all allowed within the E district. But again, that's kind of the reason why this request makes sense, because if you're going to allow residential in the E district, you need to provide places for future kids we hope to go to school, for church services, those kind of things. And I think that was one of those things that the petitioner, the person who's requesting this, has discovered, that that's one of the limitations of the district from its original inception, is it did not allow these neighborhood or residential serving things where it allows all these other broad range of uses.
And just, I don't know if anyone, I guess some of the board members would know, but what was the thinking when the E-District was created that excluded religious institutions and schools? What was the thinking at that point in time?
Well, the thought process at that time was, and I'd have to go back and look at the metamorphosis over time. I can't remember if we allowed all those residential uses in E at its inception. We may have actually gone back and added some of those over time. But the original thought process when the E district was created was to provide an area for amplified music and other type entertainment venues, kind of, in a near downtown setting, but, to be able to have that area serve as a, an area for entertainment, an area for commercial expansion. But that part of it has been success, but as it's been successful, there has been a desire for folks to live in the area, and that has again brought about the perceived need to add these uses to the district to provide for these other church and school uses that would serve future residents of the E district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams, do you have a question, Mr. Murphy?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'll get back to you on a motion in just a minute.
Yeah.
Councilmember Mundy, do you have a question of Mr. Murphy?
Just very quickly, remind us what the borders of the E-District are.
Luckily, Aaron's going to pull it up for us.
Councilmember Mundy, you can kind of see this E district that kind of starts here. This is, you zoom in a little bit right here. You can kind of see this runs along Martin Luther King Jr. Drive here. You got some E zoning here. As you head up Trade Street, that's kind of the western boundary there. And then as you kind of come up through the railroad tracks here, back up 11th Street, kind of right through here, as you head back over to Patterson, going back up to the Thomasville Furniture Plant here. And then it looks like over on, just on the east side of Ivy is about as far as it goes east, and then kind of meanders its way back down to Liberty Street, kind of Patterson in this area.
Thank you for that reminder. I just could not picture in my mind where it started and ended.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mundy. This is a public hearing. I understand no one has signed up in opposition to this. Mr. Murphy, is that correct?
That is correct. But again, Mr. Dickey with Stemwell Associates is here as a representative of the applicant.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Mr. Dickey. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Would recognize Mayor Pro Tem Adams. Her committee did hear this and recommended approval. So Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move for approval, 1, approval of the statement of consistency, for approval of this item, and 2, approval of UDO CC 12.
Second.
Thank you. Motion second. Any further discussion? All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to the roll call. Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Councilmember Scipio voting no. Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, back in 2011, maybe even 10, the entertainment district came to light or fruition. We were also being bombarded with citizens that live downtown that were complaining about the music, the laughter, the noise in the evenings and night. We built up downtown, but we also moved people down there, and they didn't know that it was going to be like that. So thanks to some forward-minded thinking people, they began to look in other areas of the town or city, because downtown can't grow any more than what it is unless it grows out. And that is into the east, northeast, and the north ward. And that's where it went. And when we voted on that, when it was brought to us, the board and the council doesn't look like it looked back then, but we basically were all in agreement that, like other cities, and we benchmarked and investigated other cities, Baltimore, Atlanta, Savannah, and others in Wilmington, Greensboro, that had entertainment districts, and we didn't have one. So we were happy to oblige and add that to our toolbox and resume for the city of Winston-Salem. If we're going to attract young people or people from other places that have lived in urban settings, you've got to have some areas in town that they don't coincide or collide with other businesses, residential, and other things. So hence, the entertainment district became what it is. One of the things that I liked about it was eventually somebody listened to extend it into the North Ward at the very beginning down to Northwest Boulevard. As you heard earlier on an item we voted on, we are about trying to enhance Cherry Street, 8th Street to Northwest Boulevard so that, and trade, so that we can become just as vital as other parts of downtown with mixing residential with other entities as well. So I was glad to support this item. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for giving us the history of that action there. It was a good one. Mayor, we have item Z10, please.
Item Z10, Mayor Joines' recommendation for appointment to the Tourism Development Authority, Dana Suggs, term expiring October 2022.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Thank you. Motion and second. Any discussion? Go to the roll call. Yes vote approves Ms. Suggs for the Tourism Development Authority. Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Mundy?
Aye.
Councilman Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilman Taylor?
Yes.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
And Councilman Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Council members, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, sir.
Thank you. Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Anyone's opposed to adjourning, please say no. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.